Welcome, dear subscribers and curious listeners of my channel. The Harry Potter movies include scenes that never appeared in the books while omitting some of the most meaningful literary moments. These differences can be so striking that readers who return to the books years later often find themselves surprised. Today, we'll explore precisely those cases where the films significantly diverged from the original text. Enjoy the video. Number 1. Harry and Luna. Luna Lovegood's portrayal in the films was charming, and her eccentricity made her all the more endearing. Harry accepted her quirks without hesitation, invited her to Slughorn's party without second thoughts, and frequently engaged in her mysterious musings and odd theories. Their connection on screen came across as warm and sincere. However, in the book, Harry's feelings about Luna were more nuanced. While he did care for her, especially after learning about her mother's death, his invitation to the party was impulsive and accompanied by quiet regret. He wasn't sure it was the right choice and even hoped she might decline. This difference highlights how emotional complexity in the book was replaced by a more straightforward portrayal in the film. Number 2. Cho's betrayal. One of the central conflicts in Order of the Phoenix revolves around Dumbledore's army holding secret meetings under the threat of being discovered by Dolores Umbridge. In the movie, it seems that Cho Chang is the one who betrayed the group, sparking outrage among fans. In reality, the blame falls on her friend Marietta Edgecombe, who broke under pressure and revealed the secret. Cho herself was not a traitor, but someone who suffered because of her loyalty to Marietta. The film simplified this situation, leaving Cho's character looking far less honorable than she actually was in the book. Number 3. Snape's calm demeanor. Severus. Snape, as portrayed by Alan Rickman, became iconic. His cold composure, cutting words, and quiet dignity left a lasting impression. But in the books, Snape is far more emotionally volatile. He lashes out in anger, holds grudges like a child, and often loses control. A clear example is the scene after Sirius Black's escape in The Prisoner of Azkaban, where Snape rages uncontrollably, hurling accusations and showing intense frustration. Such emotional outbursts were mostly absent in the films, which reshaped Snape into a more restrained and enigmatic figure than the tormented man portrayed in the novels. Number 4. The First Task. In Goblet of Fire, filmmakers transformed the first task of the Triwizard Tournament into a thrilling action sequence. Audiences watched as a dragon broke free and chased Harry across the entire school grounds, complete with flying, explosions, and near misses. In the book, however, the task was confined to a secure arena. The dragon never escaped, and Harry's challenge took place in a tightly controlled space. The chase was a cinematic invention, added purely for spectacle, though it raises questions. Why didn't anyone intervene? Where were the teachers and safety precautions? Visually stunning, yes, but logically strained. Number 5. Dudley and the Vanishing Glass. The zoo scene, where the glass vanishes and Dudley falls into the snake enclosure, became one of the most memorable moments of the first movie. Many assume it played out the same way in the book, but on the page, it happens differently. After being pushed, Harry falls and the glass vanishes so quickly that no one is quite sure what happened. Dudley shrieks and jumps back in fear, but he never actually ends up inside the enclosure. Still, the film version was so visually striking that most people remember it over the more subtle book version. Number 6. Bellatrix on the Astronomy Tower. The final scene in Half-Blood Prince, when Snape kills Dumbledore on the Astronomy Tower, is emotionally devastating. In the film, Bellatrix Lestrange stands among the Death Eaters, adding menace and intensity to the moment. But in the book, Bellatrix is not present. Her inclusion was likely a creative decision to heighten the drama and to showcase Helena Bonham Carter's magnetic performance. This choice demonstrates how directors often favor charismatic actors, even at the cost of fidelity to the source material. Number 7. The Burrow burns down. The sky is burning. In the film Half-Blood Prince, Death Eaters attack the Burrow during Christmas. Flames consume the house. Bellatrix Lestrange laughs in the distance. Greyback howls. Harry runs after them into the marsh, wand drawn, heart pounding. The scene is chaos. It's personal. It feels like war. For many viewers, this moment confirmed that nowhere, not even the Weasleys' home, was safe anymore. But in the book, the Burrow never burns. Not once. There is no Christmas attack, no fire, no battle in the reeds. The Burrow remains untouched throughout the 6th book. It is described as the only place where he was ever truly happy. Rowling uses the Burrow as a sanctuary, a soft space in the rising storm. When Harry returns there, it's a breath of peace before the horrors to come. Destroying it mid-story would have shattered that balance. The filmmakers invented the scene to raise the stakes. Visually, it works, but it also rewrites the rules. The destruction of the Burrow removes one of the last safe places in Harry's world far too soon. In the book, that moment of loss doesn't come until Deathly Hallows, when the war finally reaches home. Until then, the Burrow stands. Quiet, crooked, and whole. Number 8. You have your mother's eyes. Snape lies bleeding on the floor of the boathouse. In the film, Deathly Hallows Part 2, his final moment is quiet, almost tender. He looks up at Harry, voice fading. "Look at me," he whispers. Then comes the line that broke every heart in the room. "You have your mother's eyes." It's soft, emotional. It ties everything together, his hatred, his love, his lifelong torment. The line became unforgettable. But in the book, those words are never said. Rowling gives us silence and pain. Snape says only one thing before he dies. "Look at me." There is no mention of Lily. No poetic echo, no final confession. Harry watches as the green eyes found the black, and Snape dies without further words. That's the canon. The weight of his life is shown later, through the pensive, not through his voice, not in that moment. The film gave Snape closure. The book gave him tragedy. That line, "You have your mother's eyes," may feel right, but it belongs to the scriptwriters, not to Snape. In Rowling's story, his love remains silent to the very end, and perhaps that silence speaks louder than any line ever could. Number 9. Harry and Hermione's dance. The tent is cold. The mood is darker than ever. In the film Deathly Hallows Part 1, Ron is gone. Hermione stands in silence, wrapped in grief. Then Harry offers his hand. A soft song plays on the radio. They begin to dance, awkward, quiet, sweet. It's a fragile moment of warmth in a bleak world. No words, just the rhythm of survival. Many viewers believed it came straight from the book. It felt real. It felt earned. But the dance never happened. In the novel, after Ron leaves, the atmosphere in the tent grows heavy. Hermione becomes withdrawn. Harry tries to comfort her, but there's no music, no levity, and no dancing. Rowling describes Hermione as quietly crying each night, facing away from him. Harry watches, feeling helpless. He did not know what to say to comfort her. The bond is still there, but it's built on silence, not gestures. The film invented the dance to give the audience a breath of hope. It worked, but it also changed something fundamental. The book shows grief as raw and private, stretching across days. The film chose to soften it in a single poetic scene. One version gives us magic, the other gives us truth. Number 10. Dumbledore's wand design. The Elder Wand in the films is unforgettable. Long, dark, and carved with a series of bulbous nodes, it looks ancient and alien. When Dumbledore raises it, the wand seems to hum with power. You know, just by looking, that it is something different. By the time Voldemort wields it, it's no longer just a wand, it's a symbol, a key to victory, a weapon of myth. Fans can spot it instantly. Its design became iconic. But J.K. Rowling never described it that way. In the Deathly Hallows, the Elder Wand is introduced with mystery, not visuals. Xenophilius Lovegood calls it the most powerful wand in existence, but there's no mention of ornamentation, no carved runes, no distinct handle. Rowling writes, "The Elder Wand, the most powerful wand ever made, was a wand like any other. Its power was in legend, not in looks. Its danger came from what people believed it could do, not from how it appeared." The film turned it into a visual cue, a shortcut. When you see that wand, you know someone is holding death in their hand, but the book plays a deeper game. It hides the Elder Wand in plain sight. Ollivander never gasps at its appearance. Voldemort never praises its design, because it isn't supposed to look magical. It's just wood and core, like every other wand. The magic, as always in Rowling's world, lives in belief, not in shape. Number 11. Harry's Patronus form. In the films, Harry casts a fully formed Patronus by the time he faces the Dementors on the frozen lake. A silver stag charges forward, majestic and complete, as if summoned by instinct. It's a striking image, a symbol of his father, James Potter, who once roamed as an animagus in that same form. The audience sees it and understands this is legacy, strength, destiny. The stag becomes part of Harry's identity before we even learn its meaning. But the books take a slower path. Harry's Patronus begins as nothing more than mist. During the Quidditch match in The Prisoner of Azkaban, he tries to defend himself, but only manages a faint, shapeless cloud. Even with Lupin's help, progress is hard. Rowling writes, "A hazy, silvery light appeared at the end of Harry's wand, but he couldn't hold it." The form of the stag doesn't appear until the critical moment by the Black Lake. It's there, in the face of real danger, that Harry finally conjures a true Patronus, one that gallops across the water and drives the Dementors away. What makes the moment powerful in the book is that Harry thinks it's his father. He believes, even if just for a heartbeat, that James has returned to save him. "I knew he was dead, but it didn't feel like he was gone." Only later does he understand that it was him all along. That realization that he saved himself is the core of his growth. The films gave us beauty, but the book gave us meaning. Number 12, Hermione repairs Harry's glasses. It happens quickly in the film. On the Hogwarts Express, Harry sits with his broken glasses, looking helpless. Hermione leans in, confident and kind. She lifts her wand and says, "Oculus reparo." The glasses are fixed. Simple magic. But it does more than repair glass. It builds her character. This is our first glimpse of her brilliance, her compassion, and her control of spells before school has even begun. That moment became iconic. Fans remember it as her gentle entrance into the trio's friendship. But in the books, that spell never leaves her lips. Not once does Hermione repair Harry's glasses in the Philosopher's Stone. In fact, the very first time his glasses are magically fixed, it's not by her at all. It happens in the Chamber of Secrets, and it's Arthur Weasley who does it. After Harry crashes into the Burrow by Floo powder and tumbles out of the fireplace, disoriented and covered in ash, his glasses are cracked. Mr. Weasley pulls out his wand and says, "Let me see." "Ah, yes, reparo." That's the canon. That's the truth. Hermione, at that point in the books, is still more theory than practice. She hasn't even learned basic spells in class yet, let alone use them. Rowling carefully shows her growth from overachiever to actual skilled witch. But the film skips that arc. It hands her a wand and a moment that isn't hers. And in doing so, it rewrites the beginning of something sacred, Harry's connection to magic and to her. This small change did something big. It made Hermione the helper from the start. It put her in the spotlight sooner. And while it made for a sweet scene, it quietly erased a charming moment from Arthur Weasley, one that showed how wizards used magic in ordinary life. One that grounded the magic in warmth. Films love efficiency, but sometimes they forget that even cracked glasses have a place in the story. Number 13. The Weasley Twins, Firework Exit. Fred and George Weasley didn't just leave Hogwarts, they exploded out of it. In the Order of the Phoenix film, their escape is a full-blown rebellion. Fireworks scream through the Great Hall. Catherine wheels explode into flaming dragons. Dolores Umbridge ducks for cover as the twins soar into the sky. Students cheer. The music swells. It feels like the school itself is rising up in protest, led by two boys with matching grins and nothing left to lose. That moment became a fan favorite. It was theatrical, defiant, and glorious. But in the book, their exit is sharper, quieter, more dangerous. Fred and George don't perform a grand finale in front of cheering crowds. Instead, they set a trap, a portable swamp, to outwit Umbridge and vanish while she's still stuck in her own rage. There's no music, no applause, no slow-motion flight across the sky. J.K. Rowling writes it as a strike, not a show. "Give her hell from us, Peeves," Fred shouts, their last words before disappearing forever. It's not an act of theatre, it's a final joke with teeth. Rowling paints the scene with tension, not celebration. The twins confront Umbridge in her office after she tries to punish a younger student. They stand firm, wands raised, and unleash chaos, but the focus isn't on spectacle, it's on power and resistance. "Don't bother telling us to get out of your office," George says coolly. "We're not staying." With a bang and a flash, they're gone. No lingering camera, no heroic music, just smoke, sparks, and silence. The film added fireworks for fun, but lost the sting. The Weasley twins weren't just pranksters putting on a show, they were fighters, making their final point in the war for Hogwarts. The book's version doesn't need a soundtrack. It hits harder because it doesn't ask for applause. Number 14. Destruction of the London Bridge. The storm over London came not from the skies, but from the scriptwriter's desk. As the film adaptation of Harry Potter and the Half-Blood Prince opened with an ominous sweep of darkness curling through the clouds above the capital, a scene unfolded that would leave many believing in a catastrophe that never was. The Millennium Bridge, sleek and modern, buckled and snapped like a toy in the grip of a petulant child, flinging Muggle commuters into the Thames below. It was gripping, it was dramatic, it was never in the book. The films have long taken creative liberties, and some of those flourishes have elevated J.K. Rowling's world to a cinematic grandeur. Yet there are moments, this bridge collapse being one of the most glaring, when invention crosses into confusion. What began as an artistic addition has since seeped into the public consciousness, implanting itself as fact in the minds of countless viewers. But page by page, chapter by chapter, the destruction of the Millennium Bridge is nowhere to be found in Rowling's 6th book. The confusion is understandable. The film opens with a visual assault, Death Eaters led by Bellatrix Lestrange and Fenrir Greyback tearing through London with malicious joy. The Millennium Bridge, crowded with Muggles, begins to tremble. The steel cables whip apart, concrete crumbles, and terrified pedestrians plunge into the churning river below. It is terror rendered in pixels, designed to be unforgettable, and it is precisely that cinematic power which gives rise to the misconception. But Rowling never wrote such a thing. In the book, the terror of the Death Eaters is not reduced to a single spectacle. It is systemic, creeping, and personal. Rowling's version of Muggle chaos unfolds in headlines and anecdotes, the kind that slowly unravels in the background of conversations and front pages of the Daily Prophet. Chapter 1. The Other Minister makes it plain the magical world's infiltration of the Muggle realm has begun, but not with a toppled bridge. "Somebody's definitely interfering with the trains," says the Prime Minister's junior minister. "There are a lot of angry commuters." There is mention of hurricane winds, collapsing buildings, and a freak bridge collapse, but no names are given, no landmarks destroyed with such theatrical flair. It is here that the real detail lies. Rowling does mention a bridge collapsing, but with ambiguity. In the opening chapter, the Muggle Prime Minister recalls several disasters, including the hopelessly unsafe bridge that collapsed. But the key lies in how the scene is framed. The bridge is not named. It is referenced only as one of several incidents alongside freak storms and a murdered family. The cause is hinted to be magical interference, perhaps even Death Eater handiwork, but the narration never dwells on it. There are no Death Eaters shown flying through the streets of London, no civilians caught mid-scream as a bridge disintegrates underfoot. The film, however, is not content with subtlety. It needs drama, it needs destruction, and in this visual medium, the bridge scene becomes the dark heart of the film's opening, an act of terror designed to set the tone for Voldemort's return to power. Yet that very decision rewrites the nature of the threat as Rowling presented it. Her chaos was quiet and unsettling, grounded in politics and fear. The films transformed it into a high-speed action sequence with a body count. The discrepancy illustrates more than just a missing scene. It reveals a fundamental difference in how Rowling and the filmmakers viewed the stakes. In the novel, the Muggle world is slowly succumbing to fear. Rumours of disappearances, unexplained deaths, and strange weather build the pressure gradually. When the Wizarding and Muggle worlds bleed into one another, it's through subtle means. The tension is psychological. The Brockdale Bridge, the unnamed structure in the book, collapses off-screen, and its victims remain anonymous. The fear lies in the fact that something is wrong, but no one can quite name it. In contrast, the film gives us names, faces, screams, and spectacle. It makes the danger of the Death Eaters immediate and indisputable. There's no need for subtlety when the audience can see the bridge fall, and once seen, that image refuses to leave. It burns itself into the viewer's memory, as strong and final as the destruction it portrays. For many fans, especially those who encountered the movies before or instead of the books, the bridge's collapse became canon. It is not a small thing, this shift in storytelling. Rowling's restraint had purpose. By leaving out the exact details, she allowed fear to simmer. The reader, like the Muggles in the book, sensed something sinister was unfolding, but couldn't quite grasp the shape of it. The world felt off-kilter. That is the genius of Rowling's threat. It exists in shadows, in rumours, in brief lines from the Prime Minister's aides. The book's horror builds like fog, slow and quiet, until the reader is neck-deep without knowing when it began. Consider also the characters involved. In the book's early chapters, there are no public attacks by Death Eaters in London. The action takes place in private. We see Severus Snape in Spinner's End. We follow Dumbledore as he visits the Dursleys. We learn of Amelia Bones's death and Emmeline Vance's murder from newspaper clippings and whispered rumours. The violence is hidden. Voldemort is biding his time. The Death Eaters move like ghosts, striking from the shadows. The movie, however, makes them conquerors. The sky turns black. Death Eaters fly through London, not apparating but literally soaring in spirals of smoke. It is visually inventive, but it distorts the rules of the world. In the books, no one flies without a broomstick unless they are Lord Voldemort himself. His mastery of flight is rare, almost mythical. "Voldemort can fly?" Harry exclaims in Deathly Hallows. "He flies unsupported?" But in the film's early moments, every Death Eater does it. They whirl through the city like shadows with wings, undermining what made Voldemort's abilities so terrifying in the books. Number 15, Gringotts and the hoverboard ride. In the heart of the underground vaults of Gringotts, beneath layers of goblin-forged steel and ancient curses, the truth of the escape in Harry Potter and the Deathly Hallows rests in sharp contrast to its cinematic counterpart. The film would have you believe that Harry Potter, Hermione Granger, and Ron Weasley rocketed away from danger on a gleaming, floating metal platform, an action-packed thrill ride more suited for a science fiction blockbuster than J.K. Rowling's grounded magical world. The real story, the one written in ink and bound in canon, unfolds not with polished flair but with the grit, exhaustion and chaos that defined so much of their final journey. The trio's descent into Gringotts began not with speed, but with deception. Hermione, transfigured into Bellatrix Lestrange through Polyjuice Potion, held tight to the illusion as they entered the Wizarding Bank. Beside her stood a disguised Ron and a concealed Harry, shrouded under the invisibility cloak. The mission was desperate and precise. Retrieve the Hufflepuff cup from the Lestrange vault, one of Voldemort's hidden Horcruxes. Every moment ticked with danger, every goblin's glance a potential undoing. The book gives no space for dramatic swoops and hissing rails. It is anxiety, not velocity, that drives the scene. When the ruse fails, the trio is betrayed by the goblin Griphook, who had agreed to help them infiltrate the vault in exchange for the Sword of Gryffindor. The film maintains this betrayal but dresses it in the glamour of chase sequences and visual spectacle. Rowling, however, delivers the moment with razor precision. The betrayal is not a twist of fate set to a musical crescendo, but the grim realization that survival often comes at a cost. Griphook had betrayed them. He had taken the sword and disappeared, the narrative states with cold finality. Inside the Lestrange vault, the trio faces the Geminio and Flagranti curses, ancient spells that multiply and burn objects on contact, a defense mechanism against thieves. The room does not erupt in flames and metal as seen on screen, but instead smothers them in relentless weight and unbearable heat. Hermione screams as the treasure sears her skin. They do not leap from piles of gold. They drown in it, suffocating under the mass of enchanted greed. The tension lies not in spectacular visuals, but in the visceral horror of being crushed alive by dark magic. And then there is the dragon. In the book, the creature is not a cinematic fury of fire and flight, but a gaunt and broken beast, its spirit all but shattered by years of captivity and torture. Rowling does not depict a noble steed or a raging monster. Instead, the dragon is a tragic figure, its eyes glazed with trauma, its wings torn and scorched, a victim more than a weapon. It was a great white dragon, horned and long-jawed, with vast, black, leathery wings folded close to its mutilated body, the book whispers in somber reverence. It does not soar, it stumbles, clawing its way forward in blind panic, guided by the sound of the clankers. The escape, as Rowling paints it, is a brutal exodus, not a choreographed set-piece. The trio clings to the dragon's back, not because it is glorious, but because there is no other way. The tunnel shakes, metal groans, the air burns with the roar of alarm. The dragon does not lift them in a clean arc into the sky, but climbs, shudders, and finally breaches the surface with the painful thrust of something long held in darkness. They soared out of the bank on the dragon's back, Rowling writes, and for one long moment all three of them gazed down at the wizarding world below. Compare this raw, ragged escape to what unfolds in the film. There, the trio hurls themselves onto a sleek, silvery platform, a metallic sheet that floats as if obeying no laws of magic or physics. It is never explained, never referenced again, existing solely as a vehicle for visual momentum. They skim through collapsing tracks and billowing flames like a Quidditch team in overdrive, not as fugitives on the edge of collapse. The dragon, though present, erupts in a display of fury and vengeance that feels far more fantastical than Rowling's subdued tragedy. Nowhere in the book is there mention of a hoverboard, a flying platform, or any form of magical transportation beyond the minecart and the dragon. This platform is a cinematic invention, a tool for momentum in place of narrative weight. It glides, it swerves, it dazzles, but it does not belong. It betrays the grounded realism of Rowling's magic system, where levitation is not default and flight comes with consequence. The hoverboard is a betrayal not just of the book, but of the ethos that shaped the world of Harry Potter. In Rowling's universe, magic is effortful, governed by rules and restraint. Even the broomstick, a symbol of wizarding freedom, requires learning, skill, and practice. Nothing simply floats without reason. The hoverboard platform, unnamed and unexplained, floats with no evident enchantment, defying not just gravity but internal logic. In a world where levitation requires Wingardium Leviosa, where flight is the privilege of winged beasts or broomsticks, a free-floating surfboard beneath the feet of three teenagers, becomes jarring. This dissonance becomes more apparent when juxtaposed with other escape scenes in the series. From the broomstick getaway in Philosopher's Stone to the Thestral-led flight in Order of the Phoenix, Rowling always grounds her action in magical reality. There is tension, weight, and cost. Nothing simply works for the sake of cinematic thrill. Even port keys cause nausea and dizziness. Yet here in Gringotts the platform glides like a scene from Back to the Future 2, robbing the escape of its fragility and danger. Number 16. Hermione's necklace at Slughorn's party. At Slughorn's lavish Christmas party, in the movie adaptation of Harry Potter and the Half-Blood Prince, Hermione Granger descends into the scene adorned in a shimmering silver dress and a delicate, eye-catching necklace. Her hair is elegantly curled, her makeup flawless. She glides across the room with a newfound confidence that stuns Harry Potter into silent admiration. He glances at her with a look of surprise and intrigue, a subtle chemistry flickering between them as if something more were beginning to spark. The visual effect is undeniable. In the film, Hermione has become a vision. This is not the awkward, bookish girl who stormed into Hogwarts crying over Ron's insensitivity. This is a young woman, poised and radiant, commanding attention. But for those who cherished the book's emotional texture, this glittering portrayal is not just a dramatic choice, it is a distortion. In the original novel, J.K. Rowling crafts Hermione with a different brush on the night of Slughorn's party. She arrives at the gathering not as a polished socialite, but as a teenage girl, masking her heartbreak behind politeness and sarcasm. Her attire is not highlighted, her appearance not described in reverent detail. The true centerpiece of the evening is not how Hermione looks, but how she feels. Her fury at Ron for his relationship with Lavender Brown, her bruised pride, and her attempt to make him jealous by inviting Cormac McLaggen. These are the truths Rowling layers into the scene. There is no romantic tension with Harry, no moment of glamour. Instead, there is pain, there is conflict, there is the raw complexity of teenage emotion. In fact, Rowling never describes Hermione's necklace. There is no mention of sparkling accessories, of gowns that dazzle, or of Harry's jaw dropping at her entrance. What she gives us instead is a narrative steeped in emotional tension. The party becomes a battleground of passive aggression, of deliberate avoidance and pointed gestures. Hermione brings McLaggen as a date, not because she wants to, but because she wants Ron to see. And McLaggen, pompous and clueless, quickly becomes unbearable. Hermione's plan to incite jealousy misfires, and she retreats behind pained silences. The focus is psychological, not visual. Rowling does not rely on a glamorous makeover to signal character change. She trusts the reader to feel what Hermione feels. The movie, in contrast, translates emotion into image. The necklace becomes a symbol, not of Hermione's heartbreak, but of her transformation into a young woman seen through the male gaze. In one sweeping camera movement, the viewer is meant to gasp, to see Hermione not as the clever, sharp-tongued girl we've known, but as an object of desire. The necklace gleams, the dress hugs her frame, and suddenly the scene's emotional core is redirected. The conflict with Ron is still there, but muted, sidelined in favor of a momentary sparkle. It is a cinematic sleight of hand, a bait and switch that replaces internal conflict with surface allure. To understand how far the film deviates from the book, consider the text itself. In Chapter 15 of Half-Blood Prince, titled The Unbreakable Vow, Hermione arrives at the party and greets Harry, who notes she has brought McLaggen. "Oh, I see you've found someone to go with," says Harry, to which Hermione replies stiffly, "Yes, well, I needed someone." There is no gushing over her looks, no sparkling necklace, no stunned admiration. The energy is clipped, defensive. The real drama lies in Hermione's seething anger toward Ron. "I invited him," she says, about McLaggen, "because I was fed up with Ron." That's the heartbeat of the scene, not a visual transformation, but a relational implosion. Rowling allows Hermione to remain Hermione. She doesn't need a magical makeover to be noticed. Her presence in the book is defined not by what she wears, but by what she feels. This is a girl trying to navigate betrayal, jealousy, and loneliness. She is not trying to win attention. She is trying to survive humiliation. And the McLaggen misadventure only deepens her emotional spiral. She escapes to the girl's lavatory after he becomes unbearable, a detail entirely omitted from the film. The book leans into awkwardness, discomfort, emotional realism. The film replaces that with polish, with artificial sparkle. Harry, too, is different in the book. He is not awed by Hermione's appearance. He is more concerned with avoiding Romilda Vane and trying to stay on Slughorn's good side. His attention is not romantically diverted by Hermione. In fact, when she arrives with McLaggen, Harry's reaction is primarily one of confusion and mild amusement. He does not marvel at her transformation. He does not see her with new eyes. This crucial difference speaks volumes. In the book, Harry and Hermione are anchored in friendship. Their bond is not tinged with romantic subtext. The movie, however, flirts with the possibility, a choice that adds unnecessary complication to their relationship and rewrites the emotional focus. The necklace, then, becomes emblematic of a larger issue. It is not just a prop. It is a sign of Hollywood's tendency to simplify, to translate depth into decoration. Hermione's pain becomes jewelry. Her inner turmoil becomes a well-lit entrance. The rich, thorny, emotional knot at the heart of the party scene, Hermione's feelings of rejection, her calculated attempt at revenge, her eventual regret, all of that is sidelined for a moment that pleases the eye. The necklace is beautiful, but it is not Hermione. The misperception that this scene is canonical runs deep. Many fans, especially those more familiar with the films, carry the image of Hermione in that dress and necklace as a legitimate part of the story. They recall Harry's reaction, the charged atmosphere, the elegance. But those elements are cinematic inventions. In the book, Hermione does not shine at that party. She suffers. She makes mistakes. She lashes out. She tries and fails to manipulate Ron. The power of the book lies in its emotional authenticity. The film, by contrast, seeks emotional shorthand, a costume change, a necklace, a look. Number 17, the final duel with Voldemort. The final showdown between Harry Potter and Lord Voldemort, as portrayed in the movie Harry Potter and the Deathly Hallows Part 2, left audiences breathless with its cinematic grandeur. The two arch-enemies sprint through the rubble-strewn ruins of Hogwarts, spellfire lighting up the crumbling walls, their robes whipping behind them as they crash through windows and corridors. Sparks fly, bricks fall, and the two lock in a desperate, twisting dance of magic. Voldemort's face contorts with fury and disbelief as Harry, against all odds, begins to overpower him. Their duel concludes not in front of witnesses but alone in a shattered courtyard, where Voldemort's body disintegrates into a cloud of ash, carried away by the wind as though he had never existed. It's a visual spectacle, haunting, operatic, triumphant, but it is not what J.K. Rowling wrote. In the book, the climactic moment is markedly different. Rowling crafted Voldemort's death not as a cathartic explosion of righteousness, but as a deliberate act of narrative humility. The duel does not take place in private, nor is it romanticized with cinematic embellishment. It happens publicly in the Great Hall of Hogwarts, surrounded by survivors, wounded fighters, and the bodies of the dead. Harry faces Voldemort openly, his voice calm, his wand steady. There is no chase, no slow-motion leap through the air, no dramatic plunge into the abyss, just a single moment, a spell, and silence. What the film transforms into an epic operatic battle is, in truth, a brief, clear culmination of years of carefully woven storytelling. Voldemort is not destroyed by someone else's power. He is defeated by his own arrogance, his own inability to understand the magic of love and sacrifice. The Elder Wand, which he stole from Dumbledore's tomb, refuses to kill its true master. And when Voldemort casts the killing curse at Harry, it rebounds upon him. The moment is quiet, clean, final. Tom Riddle hit the floor with a mundane finality, Rowling writes. His body feeble and shrunken, the white hands empty, the snake-like face vacant and unknowing. No ash, no wind, no dramatic dispersion, just a man's corpse on the floor, as forgettable in death as he was terrifying in life. The decision to present Voldemort's death without spectacle was not accidental. Rowling's narrative intention is to strip the Dark Lord of the mythic aura that had surrounded him for 7 books. He is not a god, nor a demon. He is not eternal. He is, in the end, just a man who made wrong choices. And Harry knew, the book says, that at last the job he had been chosen to do was done. There is no roar of victory, no cheers. The silence that follows is more powerful than any explosion. The film's reinvention of this scene, while visually stunning, misleads many viewers into believing it is faithful to the book. But Rowling's Voldemort dies not with grandeur, but with vulnerability. His death is a moment of deflation, not celebration. He falls in front of everyone, students, teachers, enemies, and allies, and his body remains. There is no ambiguity, no poetic vanishing. His mortality is exposed, undeniable, ordinary. By turning Voldemort to ash, the film erases one of the most profound statements Rowling made in her narrative. The tyrant who inspired fear across the wizarding world is not granted an extraordinary end. He dies as any man would, his final expression one of shock, not rage. His legacy, though terrible, cannot save him from the human truth of death. Rowling's depiction forces the reader to confront the reality that evil is not supernatural. It is made by men, and it ends with them. Even the structure of the book supports this tone. The battle at Hogwarts ends and life resumes. Bodies are moved. Injuries tended, the wounded grieve and recover. Harry walks through the castle, not as a victor, but as a young man who has done what he must. The world will not be better simply because Voldemort is gone. There is work to do. The silence of the Great Hall after Voldemort's fall mirrors this. No explosion, no music, just the sound of breath returning to tired lungs. Perhaps the most symbolic element is that Voldemort's body is left intact. He is not destroyed by external force, but undone by the very magic he tried to master. His death is justice, not vengeance. When his lifeless form hits the floor, Rowling writes, he was dead, killed by his own rebounding curse, and Harry stood with 2 wands in his hand, staring down at the shell of his enemy. This sentence, so spare in its construction, contains the full weight of the saga. Harry does not gloat, he does not weep, he does not collapse, he simply is in the aftermath of truth. The transformation of Voldemort's end from literary humility to cinematic drama reflects the different purposes of the mediums. Films often demand grandeur, but in this instance, the artistic choice altered the core message. Voldemort's demise in the book serves as an ethical statement. Evil is not eternal. It can be defeated not with violence, but with knowledge, courage, and understanding. The movie, by contrast, suggests that ultimate victory must look spectacular. Harry's journey is one of internal transformation. He does not seek vengeance. He throws away the Elder Wand. He uses the disarming charm, not a killing spell. These choices define who he is. In the film, these nuances are lost beneath a storm of visual chaos, but in the book, they form the heart of his character. He wins because he refuses to become what he fights. Even the language Rowling uses is stripped of sentimentality. Voldemort was dead, killed by his own rebounding curse. There is a cold, factual weight to it. No metaphor, no fire, no ash, just a finality. This reinforces the idea that death is not dramatic, it is certain, and in Voldemort's case, deserved. The moment does not glorify battle, it mourns what was lost to it. The presence of witnesses is crucial in the book. Everyone sees Voldemort fall. Everyone understands that his power is broken. The myth dies with the man. The communal witnessing of his defeat is a form of healing. The The war has not been won by a lone hero in isolation, but by a collective resistance, and they are all there to see its final moment. The symbolism of the Elder Wand's loyalty is another piece lost in translation. The wand turns on Voldemort not because Harry stole it, but because Draco Malfoy disarmed Dumbledore and Harry disarmed Draco. This chain of disarmament, not murder, becomes Voldemort's undoing. Power, Rowling insists, is not in killing, but in choices. The film bypasses this intricacy, simplifying it into visual shorthand. The story, as Rowling wrote it, is a meditation on mortality and power. Voldemort's death is not meant to satisfy a need for visual closure. It is meant to teach. He feared death above all, and in the end it claimed him like anyone else. His body did not vanish. It lay there, still powerless. And in that image, Rowling reminded readers, no magic can save us from our own humanity. The juxtaposition of the two deaths, Snape's and Voldemort's, is also telling. Snape dies alone in the Shrieking Shack, his final moments full of regret and memory. Voldemort dies surrounded by people, but utterly alone. No one mourns him, no one speaks his name. He is not mourned, not revered. He is just dead. This contrast sharpens Rowling's critique of legacy and consequence. The final duel is short, just a few pages, but it is layered with meaning. Harry explains Voldemort's fatal mistake as the duel begins. He tells him why the Elder Wand won't obey him. He offers him a chance, a moment to feel remorse. Voldemort laughs. He doesn't believe it. He never did. And that ultimately is his doom. Not a spell, not a sword, but his own refusal to understand love, regret, and mercy. There is a line in the book that encapsulates the lesson. Do not pity the dead, Harry. Pity the living, and above all, those who live without love. Voldemort lived without love, without trust, without true allegiance. He used people, feared death, and sought immortality. And in the end, he died exactly as Dumbledore predicted he would, unloved, unmourned, and entirely alone. The body lying on the Great Hall floor is the culmination of that prophecy. It is not just Voldemort's story that ends there, but the ideology he represents, the belief that fear can rule, that power is everything, that death must be defeated at all costs. Rowling's choice to leave his body intact is deliberate. It grounds the fantasy in reality. No one escapes death, not even the most feared wizard in the world. When Harry leaves the Great Hall after the battle, he does not seek applause. He walks away from the wand, the power, the fame. He seeks quiet, he seeks healing, and that more than anything defines the end of the story. Not a war cry, not a hero's cheer, but a return to humanity. In this, the book departs radically from the movie. Rowling's message is subtle, enduring, powerful. Evil can be defeated, not with louder spells, but with wiser hearts. Voldemort's death, mundane and unceremonious, is not a disappointment. It is the very point. Number 18, Stormy Weather at platform 934. On a chilly September morning, London's King's Cross station stood veiled in a melancholy drizzle. In the film version of Harry Potter and the Philosopher's Stone, the platform was eerily quiet. Clouds hung low and heavy, and young Harry Potter, burdened with a trolley and an owl in a cage, wandered hesitantly through the station, seemingly unnoticed by the world. It is a haunting image, one that cemented itself in the minds of millions of fans as the true beginning of Harry's magical journey. But for those who have read J.K. Rowling's original text, the scene unfolds very differently. The contrast is striking, not just in tone, but in emotional resonance. The movie fabricated a sense of loneliness and gloom that didn't exist in the book's version of the same scene. That small artistic liberty, adding a stormy atmosphere and silence, has misled many into believing it was canon. In the book, Harry's experience on that very same morning was not painted in shadow and fog. It was, in fact, brimming with life, motion, and anticipation. Rowling describes a bustling station filled with travellers, noisy families, and vibrant energy. There was no brooding sky or spectral loneliness. Harry wasn't wandering like a lost soul. He was experiencing something new with the kind of nervous excitement that any 11-year-old might feel when setting out on an adventure. There were lots of people. A few of them seemed to be going where he was going, the book says. This simple sentence carries an energy of life, movement, and human presence, not the solitude projected in the film. The film's choice to present Harry as a somber figure walking slowly through the cold station creates a powerful cinematic moment, but it's a moment built on invention, not the source material. The overcast sky, the echoing footsteps, the whispering wind, all these elements suggest that Harry is entirely alone in the world, facing the magical unknown with only his own courage. That, however, is a director's emotional palette at work, not Rowling's pen. In the book, even before meeting the Weasleys, Harry is surrounded by human voices, train whistles, and the clutter of daily life. There is tension, yes, but not isolation. In fact, Rowling chose to infuse the King's Cross sequence with curiosity rather than despair. Harry is not a ghost slipping through mist. He is a boy in the middle of a crowd scanning for signs and clues, unsure but hopeful. When he spots the Weasleys, it's not from the depths of solitude, but from a place of observation. The book reads, a group of people stood around a large, red-haired family. There is light in this sentence, both literally and figuratively. The brightness of red hair, the warmth of family, the suggestion that Harry is being drawn into something joyful rather than just rescued from cold indifference. The storm in the movie frames Harry as a Dickensian orphan, amplifying the drama of his transition from the Muggle world to the Wizarding one. But in Rowling's narrative, Harry has already passed that emotional threshold. He has received his letter, met Hagrid, shopped in Diagon Alley. He's no longer the boy under the stairs, he's a student going to school. The book doesn't need to underline his loneliness with bad weather. It emphasizes anticipation, not alienation. He felt oddly anxious, like he was about to do something he'd never done before. That is the heartbeat of Rowling's version, not fear, but newness. This discrepancy between the book and the film has led many fans to remember the storm as part of the story, forgetting that it was never mentioned in the text. The sky in the book is never described as overcast. There's no rain, no wind sweeping through the arches of the station. The silence in the movie platform exists to make Harry's voice, his doubts and his fears echo louder, but they are not the sounds Rowling intended us to hear. Instead, she let us hear the murmur of families, the clang of luggage carts, and the cheerful chaos of travel. Director Chris Columbus crafted a moving scene, to be sure, but one that inserts an emotion that Rowling didn't write. It is important to understand that this is not simply a matter of condensing plot. It is an emotional rewrite. In the film, Harry is hesitant to approach the barrier, watching the Weasleys with wide-eyed caution, almost trembling. But the book says he ran toward the barrier. Ran, not tiptoed. That single verb speaks volumes. Harry wasn't paralyzed by anxiety. He was driven by hope, by curiosity, by eagerness. He was bold, not broken. This artistic license extended to visual cues as well. In the film, the train is obscured in fog, its red paint dulled by shadows, its presence more mystical than material. But in the book, the Hogwarts Express is as vivid and real as the candy cart that rolls through its aisles. A scarlet steam engine was waiting next to a platform packed with people. The train is not a ghostly apparition, it's alive, loud and present. The platform isn't empty, it's crowded with parents shouting goodbyes and owls screeching in cages. There is joy and disorder, not loneliness and gloom. The difference in tone also reshapes how we understand Harry's inner world. The film suggests he enters the magical world in a state of melancholy, but Rowling's text tells another story. When Harry finally boards the train, he is not weighed down by sadness, but buoyed by wonder. He buys candy, meets Ron, laughs. The world is opening up to him, not closing in. The film's version suggests a boy escaping a grey world. The book shows a boy entering a bright one. That subtle shift affects everything that follows. If we believe Harry is constantly haunted by his past, we miss how much the magical world truly becomes his home from the very first step. The emotional tone of the platform scene also shapes our perception of the Weasleys. In the film, they are saviours in a storm, offering Harry a lifeline. In the book, they are a loud, loving family that Harry admires from a distance before casually asking for help. There is no desperation in his voice when he turns to Mrs. Weasley. There is curiosity. He wants to do the right thing, not escape a nightmare. "Excuse me," he says. "Do you know how to get onto the platform?" That's not the voice of a lost soul. It's the voice of a student. Misremembering this scene as a rainy, lonely moment has also caused some to mischaracterize Harry's emotional growth. They see him as more wounded than he truly was at this point in the story. The book version of the scene reflects a boy already healing, already excited for what lies ahead. The stormy platform in the film makes Harry's journey seem like a continuous escape from darkness, but Rowling gave him rays of light early on to guide him forward. It is understandable that films must condense, dramatize, and emphasize, but when those changes are so subtle that they feel like they belong, they can overwrite the original text in public memory. Many fans now remember a rainy station, a gloomy sky, and a desolate Harry staring at the wall between platforms 9 and 10. But those elements never existed on Rowling's page. The power of film to redefine canon is real, and it's why such changes deserve scrutiny. Rowling's decision to make the station sunny and crowded was deliberate. She didn't want Harry to begin this journey in darkness. The Dursleys were the darkness. King's Cross was the threshold into light. It was noisy, yes, and overwhelming, but it wasn't sorrowful. He didn't know what to expect, but somehow this seemed exactly right. That line from the book gives us everything we need to understand how Harry felt. The platform, the train, the Weasleys, it all made sense to him. Not through fog, not through fear, but through wonder. The scene in the book also establishes Harry's courage more strongly. He doesn't wait for the perfect moment or hesitate when Mrs. Weasley tells him what to do. He simply does it. He walks forward, heart pounding, and passes through the barrier like any other student. The movie's version makes this moment feel almost magical in itself, cloaked in mist and danger. But Rowling didn't need that. The magic came from the ordinary, the idea that even in a crowded train station, something extraordinary could be hidden in plain sight. Fans who believe the storm was part of the book are remembering the emotion of the film, not the reality of the text. This is not a small change, it's a transformation of tone. It reshapes how we view Harry, how we view the magical world, and how we understand his first step toward destiny. Memory is powerful, and when visuals replace words, truth can be quietly rewritten. In a story so grounded in the contrast between the mundane and the magical, it matters how that first threshold is crossed. Rowling wanted Harry's first step into the wizarding world to feel warm, exciting, a bit confusing, but not cold or mournful. That emotional balance sets the stage for everything to come. The film chose a more dramatic path, and while effective on screen, it distorts the tone of the story's beginning. The power of a single visual moment, a grey sky, a lonely boy, a silent station, can eclipse the author's intention. But by returning to the original text, we rediscover the joy, the light, and the very real human energy that Rowling gave to the world of Harry Potter. The thunderstorm never happened, but the excitement, the nerves, the crowded platform, those are the truths that built the story we love. Number 19, the real King's Cross conversation. After Harry Potter willingly walks into the Forbidden Forest to sacrifice himself, the world turns dark. He expects death. Instead, he awakens in a place that appears eerily like King's Cross Station, but painted in pure white. In the film Harry Potter and the Deathly Hallows Part 2, This moment becomes a visual interlude, bright mist, calm silence, and a gentle conversation with Albus Dumbledore. It feels otherworldly and soothing, like a dream without gravity. Yet what many fans of the movies often mistake for J.K. Rowling's original vision is only a sliver of what truly happened in the book. The cinematic version, while poetic, omits the soul of this scene, the full, aching confession of Albus Dumbledore and the bitter truth about his past. The film gives us symbols. The book gives us scars. In the film, Dumbledore appears almost angelic, waiting patiently to reassure Harry. The conversation is gentle, vague, and philosophical. There's a vague reference to choice, to going back, and to love. Yet nothing in the film suggests the depth of Dumbledore's regret, or the real cost of his youthful hunger for power. Viewers might walk away thinking Dumbledore is a serene guide, always wise, always above the fray. But in the book, Harry meets not a demigod, but a broken man. In that place beyond life, Dumbledore does not stand as a savior, but as someone still tormented by past sins. Dumbledore's confessions in the book rip away the veil of perfection that the movies seem to drape over him. He reveals the truth about Ariana, his sister, the girl whose tragic death defined the course of his life. Readers learn that Ariana was attacked by Muggle boys when she was only 6. Her magic turned inward, becoming uncontrollable. "My father went after them," Dumbledore admits in the book, "and attacked them. He was arrested and sent to Azkaban." It's the kind of confession that changes how we see not only Dumbledore, but the roots of the entire story. And then there's Gellert Grindelwald. In the film, Grindelwald is barely a name whispered in the darkness, but in the book, Dumbledore speaks of him with the agony of lost love and lost purpose. Their friendship, based on shared dreams of power and magical domination, was seductive. Grindelwald was brilliant, Dumbledore says in the book. Even then, he had brilliant ideas. He was wrong, of course, but he was very convincing. Their plan to conquer for the greater good had a poetic grandeur, until it ended in Ariana's death. What happened that night remains uncertain even in the book. A three-way duel between Albus, Aberforth and Gellert led to Ariana being struck down by a stray curse. "I don't know which of us caused her death," Dumbledore tells Harry in Deathly Hallows, "but I was the one who should have known better. I was the adult. I should have stopped it." These words are not symbols. They are raw truth. The film avoids this. It never allows Dumbledore to bleed. This moment in the book becomes not just a passing point in Harry's journey, but a mirror. Dumbledore's arc is revealed not as flawless guidance, but as a path of terrible mistakes, followed by decades of atonement. He does not pretend to be perfect. He admits he craved power, that he believed he could use it wisely, and that he was tempted to do what Voldemort later attempted, only with more charm and better manners. Dumbledore's own words damn him. "Do not pity the dead, Harry. Pity the living, and above all, those who live without love." This line exists in the film too, but stripped of context, it sounds like a fortune cookie. In the book, it is a man lamenting his own choices. What the film also erases is the heavy conversation about Hallows and Horcruxes. In the book, Dumbledore admits that his fascination with the Deathly Hallows was not purely academic. He sought them. He wanted them. "I was fit to own the Elder Wand, Harry, not because I was good or wise, but because I was willing to admit my mistakes." These words matter. Dumbledore was not gifted power. He stole it, craved it, regretted it. In the film, he simply glows in the white mist, a kindly guide without shadows. It's a beautiful lie. Another omission that damages the emotional weight of the story is the exploration of Harry's own soul. In the book, the hideous childlike thing lying beneath the bench is described in grotesque detail, a bloody, whimpering creature that stirs pity and dread. Dumbledore tells Harry that this thing is the piece of Voldemort's soul that lived inside him. The film barely lingers on it as though it were just another visual quirk. But in the book, this dying, unloved fragment becomes a symbol of what Voldemort became, a creature beyond saving. Harry's understanding of death, sacrifice, and love changes profoundly in the book's King's Cross chapter. Dumbledore does not simply congratulate him, he explains what Lily's sacrifice did, how Harry had to die willingly to defeat Voldemort. By walking into the forest, you have ensured that Voldemort will not be able to kill any of your friends tonight. This line, so important, so powerful, that was not spoken in the film. Instead, we get vague sentiments about going back or moving on, and a soft focus close-up on Dumbledore's eyes. The book also addresses Harry's power to choose. It's not an abstract idea, it is the central theme. Dumbledore tells him that he can choose to return to life, not because destiny demands it, but because Harry has the right. He has earned it. And in choosing to return, Harry chooses pain, responsibility, and leadership. In the film, this is presented with a gentle smile and a fade to white. In the book, it's a moment of clarity born from suffering. Dumbledore also acknowledges that his greatest sin was pride, the belief that he could be the master of death, that he could use power without being corrupted by it. This is crucial, because it parallels Voldemort's own downfall. Both men feared death. Both sought mastery over it. Only one was willing to admit he was wrong. "I was afraid," Dumbledore says in the book. Afraid of the truth. The film does not dare show Dumbledore as afraid, but Rowling made sure we knew he was. Even the visual setting in the book feels more personal. Harry is not just in whiteness, he's in a vision of King's Cross, complete with benches and arches and the echo of trains. It's a place tied to beginnings and endings, at the start of his Hogwarts journey, and now the possible end. The film offers an ethereal dreamscape, but the book roots this purgatory in something deeply human. Memory, architecture, meaning. There's even blood on Harry's robes. He feels weak, wounded. In the film, he is clean and glowing. In the book, he is still paying the price. By removing Dumbledore's confessions, the film also removes the moral weight of the series. Readers see that the man who guided Harry was flawed, not omniscient. He used Harry, he admits it. "I cared more for your happiness than your knowing the truth," Dumbledore says. "More for your peace of mind than my plan." This isn't villainy, but it's not sainthood either. It's human, and that's why it matters. That's why it stays with you. The film reduces all this to a wise smile and a nod. It forgets the pain. One of the most shocking things in the book is Dumbledore's admission that he once dreamed of ruling the Muggle world, not to destroy it, but to control it for their own good. These words are chilling because they echo the ideology Voldemort used to justify his reign of terror. Dumbledore changed, Voldemort did not. That is the difference. And that difference, that struggle to resist the intoxicating appeal of power, is absent in the movie. Without it, the story becomes a fairy tale, not a reckoning. Even Harry's reaction to Dumbledore in the book is more complicated. He does not blindly revere him, he questions him, he challenges him, he is angry, confused, emotional. "You knew what he was like, you knew he had made a Horcrux," he asks about Voldemort. Dumbledore bows his head. He admits it. This is not a moment of wisdom. It is a moment of guilt. The film again chooses peace over honesty. What the book gives us and the film does not is closure, not just for Harry but for Dumbledore himself. The former headmaster is not at peace because he is perfect. He is at peace because he has confessed, has owned his sins, and has helped Harry find the courage to walk forward. The scene is not about glowing white stations. It is about confronting pain with truth, and it's about earning redemption, not inheriting it. The movie audience walks away with an image of Dumbledore as an all-knowing mentor. The readers of the book know better. He was brilliant, yes. Brave, yes. But also flawed, frightened, and guilty. And that's what makes him great. The real lesson of the King's Cross chapter is that even heroes must reckon with their darkness. That wisdom is not about knowing everything. It's about being willing to say, I was wrong. Many viewers finish the movie without realizing that Dumbledore had once been tempted by the very same ambition that corrupted Tom Riddle. They never hear the heartbreak in his voice when he speaks of Ariana. They never see the weight of shame in his posture. They see a kind old man glowing in light, telling Harry what to do. They miss the man who once believed he could be a god. This is why so many people think the movie scene is canon. It looks official, it feels final, but it's only a ghost of what Rowling wrote. It's the surface without the soul. Dumbledore's real legacy is not a speech in the light. It is the dark truths he dared to speak when he no longer had anything left to lose. Number 20, Neville kills Nagini in front of Voldemort. Neville Longbottom, the shy, forgetful boy from the very first train ride to Hogwarts, is often hailed as one of the most remarkable character evolutions in the entire Harry Potter saga. The films, recognizing the appeal of this transformation, chose to elevate his final moments in Deathly Hallows Part 2 into something truly cinematic. In doing so, however, they created a dramatic set piece that never actually occurred in the books. Neville beheading Nagini, Voldemort's snake, right in front of the Dark Lord during the climax of the Battle of Hogwarts. It's a scene etched into the visual memory of every fan of the movies. The charging leap, the sword of Gryffindor glinting, the hiss of a severed head falling into the ruins of Hogwarts. It's powerful, unforgettable, and entirely non-canonical. The book tells a different story, one of patience, timing, and narrative precision. The choice to move Neville's act of heroism to a later moment in the novel wasn't accidental. J.K. Rowling had spent 7 books carefully structuring the destruction of Voldemort's Horcruxes, each a piece of his fractured soul, and each crucial to ensuring that the Dark Lord could finally die. The final Horcrux, Nagini, was not destroyed while Voldemort still breathed. That change in the films, though thrilling on screen, dismantles the core logic of the original climax and undermines the stakes that had been carefully laid for years. In the book, Voldemort does not disintegrate into ashes mid-air. He dies a human death. When Harry finally defeats him, it's not because of an explosion or magical detonation. It's because the Elder Wand refused to kill its true master. His body hits the floor like anyone else's. Tom Riddle hit the floor with a mundane finality, the book says. No poetic vanishing, no burning away into nothingness, just a body. And at that point Nagini had already been killed. But crucially, that act did not happen in front of Voldemort. It happened moments before his final duel with Harry. Neville kills Nagini in Harry Potter and the Deathly Hallows, Chapter 36, The Flaw in the Plan. During this final battle, Voldemort has ordered the sorting hat to be placed on Neville's head and set him aflame, attempting to force him into submission. But Neville resists, pulls the sword of Gryffindor from the hat, as only a true Gryffindor could, and then, at a precise moment when Voldemort is distracted, he kills the snake. It's a brilliant culmination of his arc, but the point remains, Voldemort does not see it happen. He is not watching. The moment is strategic, not confrontational. It's essential to understand that in the book, Neville's act is not a duel with destiny, but a tactically significant strike in a larger plan. The film chooses another path. It turns the scene into something almost mythological. Neville, standing on a crumbling bridge as Voldemort and his forces rain chaos upon the castle, shouts a one-liner and leaps forward, swinging the sword in a cinematic arc that could rival the climax of any epic fantasy film. Nagini's head is severed in slow motion. Voldemort screams in visible agony. It's visually arresting but misleading. The books never portray Voldemort as emotionally attached to Nagini in such a visceral way. He values her, yes, as a pet, a weapon and a Horcrux, but he is not undone by her death in the middle of a battle. He doesn't lose his mind screaming into the sky. In fact, the very idea that Neville could kill a piece of Voldemort's soul while Voldemort was still alive, and that would not immediately kill him, contradicts the logic of how Horcruxes work. Voldemort's mortality is tethered to these fragments. Until each one is destroyed, he cannot truly die. The films, by flipping the order, create a logical inconsistency. Voldemort is already vulnerable in the scene, even though the last Horcrux, Nagini, has not yet been destroyed. It would mean Voldemort is mortal before his soul is whole, which defies the very structure Rowling built throughout the books. Neville's moment in the book, while less dramatic on the surface, is laced with thematic richness. When he pulls the sword from the hat and acts, he is not doing it for glory. He is doing it out of duty and courage. The narration doesn't linger on special effects. It highlights the fact that Neville is no longer afraid. He has become someone capable of standing alone, not for applause, but for principle. Rowling writes, "Then, as the snake reared, poised to strike, Neville charged. The slash of the sword was so sudden that no one saw it, but the great snake's head parted from its body. A clean, unceremonious strike, effective, efficient, and perfectly timed. No dramatics, no thunderclaps. This decision also reinforces another core theme of the book, the power of ordinary courage. Neville is not the boy who lived. He is not a chosen one. He was once a boy who lost his parents to madness and couldn't even keep track of his toad. And yet, in the end, he fulfills a task as important as Harry's. His action is crucial to the defeat of the Dark Lord, but it is not performed in a blaze of cinematic glory. It is quiet, steadfast, like Neville himself. One might argue that the film needed a moment to showcase Neville's growth. That's fair. His evolution is important and inspiring, but what the film gains in spectacle, it loses in narrative coherence. The reshuffling of events is not merely cosmetic. It changes the entire metaphysical framework of Voldemort's defeat. It paints a picture in which Voldemort can suffer the destruction of his final Horcrux and yet still function. In the book, there is a clear chain of cause and effect. Only when the last Horcrux is gone can Harry's final confrontation with Voldemort have any permanent meaning. The emotional tension of the book's ending comes precisely from the fact that nobody knows if Voldemort is truly vulnerable. Until the last moment, the possibility remains that he might once again cheat death. Harry understands this, which is why he waits, why he times his final act so carefully. Everything hinges on the destruction of Nagini. That death is not for show, it is the key in the lock. Furthermore, the book's structure honors every character's contribution. While Harry faces Voldemort, others, Ron and Hermione included, fight to eliminate the remaining Horcruxes. Their mission to destroy Hufflepuff's cup, Ravenclaw's diadem, and finally Nagini is not just subplot filler, it's the spine of the resolution. Neville's role as the destroyer of the final Horcrux gives him a place among the true victors of the war, but his act is part of a collaborative effort, not a solo stunt. The film, on the other hand, often isolates its characters for the sake of set pieces. It wants individual hero moments. It wants Neville on a bridge, swinging a sword like a knight of legend. It wants Voldemort screaming in slow motion. It wants a crowd of Death Eaters gasping. It wants a triumph to be seen. But the book does not care about what is seen. It cares about what matters. Nagini herself is also portrayed differently. In the films, she becomes almost supernatural, more than a snake, less than a creature. She slithers through the air, coils like smoke, and seems impervious until Neville's blade cuts her down in a dramatic explosion. In the book, she is dangerous but grounded. She's a living creature, bound by physical limits. Her death is not explosive, it is final and necessary. Voldemort's lack of immediate reaction in the book is also telling. He is engaged with Harry at the time of Nagini's death. He is not paying attention to anything else. That's the beauty of the moment. Voldemort is already slipping. He no longer sees the whole board. He doesn't realize that while he is fixated on killing Harry, the game is already lost. That's the fatal flaw. The flaw in the plan, as the chapter is aptly titled. This flaw that Voldemort believes power alone can protect him echoes in how he underestimates Neville. He doesn't even kill him when he has the chance. He mocks him, tortures him, and assumes he poses no real threat. That arrogance allows Neville to get close enough to finish the job. It's poetic justice, not action movie flash. Some fans, especially those who know the story only through the films, remember the false sequence as truth. They describe the death of Nagini during the final duel as canon. They see it as the moment Voldemort starts to unravel, but the unraveling began long before. It began with every Horcrux destroyed. It began with every friend who stood up against tyranny. It began when Voldemort made the mistake of believing he was alone on a higher plane of existence, above the reach of mortals. The snake's death is important precisely because of its timing. When Neville swings the sword, he is sealing Voldemort's fate, not announcing it. Voldemort does not die because of Neville. He dies because of everyone, because of the sum total of all their efforts, losses, and sacrifices. That is the lesson the book delivers. The defeat of evil is not a single moment, but 1,000 little ones stitched together by resolve. The films, of course, had to end with a bang. The visual language of cinema demands spectacle. But for readers who remember the quiet moments, the fall of a body, the whisper of a blade, the silence that follows a final act of courage, Neville's true triumph is far more powerful than a cinematic swing. His blade does not flash in glory. It cuts through the lie that power belongs to the chosen few. And that is a truth no film can fully capture. Number 21. Slytherins sent to the dungeons. In the shadowy corridors of the final film, as the storm of war gathered above Hogwarts, a troubling image lingers, one that never belonged to the canon of the books. As McGonagall takes charge and calls the school to prepare for battle, the camera pans to a group of Slytherins, their green-trimmed robes a stark contrast against the anxious students around them. With a cold command, they are marched off not to safety, but to confinement. The film presents this scene with a severity that cuts deeper than just cinematic drama. It casts an entire Hogwarts house in the role of cowards and traitors. It cements, in the minds of many viewers, the idea that every Slytherin turned their back on the fight, but the books, ever more intricate and humane, tell a different tale. In Harry Potter and the Deathly Hallows, Rowling is careful with her depiction of loyalty, fear, and courage. When the moment comes for the students to choose between evacuation and staying to fight, she shows a range of responses. Professor McGonagall indeed suggests that students underage or unwilling to fight should leave, and when Pansy Parkinson shrieks, "But he's there! Potter's there! Someone grab him!" It isn't only a Slytherin reaction, it's a singular voice. Rowling writes, "There was an uproar, the Slytherin table all rose, and Snape was on his feet. This moment of tension passes quickly, and then the choice is made. But what the book never does is describe the entire Slytherin house being arrested or locked away. In truth, when McGonagall calls for those underage to evacuate, the Slytherins, with the exception of a few, left. This phrasing, precise and telling, is often forgotten. The phrase, "with the exception of a few," is everything. Rowling does not name them outright, perhaps intentionally, to let the silence speak. But that sliver of ambiguity is deliberate. It acknowledges that even among the house, so often associated with ambition and cunning, some chose to fight. The film discards this nuance with the casual brutality of a script trimmed for time. It stages the moment with McGonagall ordering Filch to take them to the dungeons, referring to the entire Slytherin house. The message, clear and unmissable, is that Slytherins are not to be trusted. They are not to be allowed the chance to fight. They are guilty until proven innocent, and worse, they're denied the opportunity to prove innocence at all. In a story where the power of choice is a central theme, this denial cuts at the very heart of Rowling's moral landscape. It is a cinematic invention that becomes a quiet betrayal of the books. Rowling, who spent 7 volumes dismantling simple binaries of good and evil, left space for complexity. She crafted a world where Peter Pettigrew, a Gryffindor, could betray his friends, and where Severus Snape, a Slytherin, could die a hero. But the movie undoes this careful balance with one sweeping generalization. All Slytherins are led away, stripped of voice, stripped of choice. The consequences of this change extend far beyond a single scene. For many casual viewers, the film is their only exposure to the story. They walk away believing that Slytherins, as a rule, chose cowardice. The phrase "Slytherin cowards" becomes a meme, a joke, a shorthand for betrayal. But this shorthand is a fiction. The books do not support it. Rowling, while not romanticizing Slytherin House, never allowed it to be a monolith of darkness. She wrote in shades of grey, in complications and contradictions. Consider the character of Horace Slughorn. A Slytherin by house, Slughorn is not a Death Eater, nor a coward. In fact, when the battle comes to the castle, Slughorn returns to fight. He brings reinforcements. Rowling writes, "And now Slughorn was there, his wand raised, and with a great cry he joined the fray." He does not flee, he does not hesitate, he returns and he fights. It is a deliberate inclusion, a message in character form. Slytherins can be brave too. The film includes Slughorn in the battle, but without the weight his choice carries in the book. In Rowling's version, Slughorn's return is redemptive. It is a personal reckoning with his past, his guilt over Tom Riddle, and his own cowardice during darker times. When he stands and fights, he is reclaiming honor, not just for himself but for his house. The movie glosses over this. It gives him screen time, but not the gravity of purpose that the book gives him. His arc is smoothed over, and the opportunity to challenge audience assumptions is lost. There is a particular cruelty in how the film silences the few Slytherins who stayed. Rowling left room for readers to imagine them, perhaps Blaise Zabini, perhaps even Theodore Nott, who is known for his intelligence and independence. Maybe it was Daphne Greengrass or Millicent Bulstrode. The point is not who they were, but that they existed. Their presence in the castle, fighting for Hogwarts, complicates the easy narrative. The film doesn't just ignore them, it erases them. This erasure matters. In a world where children often look to these stories for guidance about identity, loyalty, and belonging, to reduce an entire group to villainy is a dangerous simplification. Slytherins are ambitious, yes, but that ambition can be noble. That cunning can be used for strategy, for resilience. To strip the house of any redemption in the moment of greatest need is to deny its members humanity. It sends a message that identity is destiny, a message Rowling spent her career refuting. The irony is sharp when we remember that the Sorting Hat itself warned against such thinking. In Harry Potter and the Order of the Phoenix, it sings, "For our Hogwarts is in danger from external deadly foes, and we must unite inside her, or we'll crumble from within." The hat begs for unity, for understanding across houses. Yet the film drives a wedge exactly where Rowling tried to build a bridge. Even Draco Malfoy, who flees the battle in the book, is treated with more complexity in print than on screen. In the novel, he is a boy torn, frightened, but not evil. His hesitation, his fear, it is human. In the movie, his cowardice is emphasized without the full context of his internal war. In the books, his story is not a fall, it is a tragedy. He is a boy groomed for darkness who cannot go through with murder and who survives the war with deep scars. But again, nuance is sacrificed for clarity. There is no better illustration of Rowling's view on the moral ambiguity of Slytherins than in the character of Severus Snape. The ultimate double agent, Snape's loyalties were never simple. He was cruel, certainly. He was not kind, but he was also, in Dumbledore's words, bravest man I ever knew. The books build this slow, painful portrait. Snape's bravery does not come from open declarations or heroic speeches. It comes from sustained sacrifice. From choosing again and again to protect the son of the woman he loved, from risking everything every day while being hated by all. Snape's story should be the counterweight to the myth of the Slytherin coward. But the film presents his house as a footnote in the final battle. No mention is made of those who stayed behind. No attention is given to their fight, their defiance, their courage. And so the audience is left with an illusion, a fictional scene that pretends to be truth. It is worth noting that Rowling herself confirmed this. In post-publication interviews, she clarified that some Slytherins did stay, that the house was not absent from the final stand. It was an editorial decision by the filmmakers, not a narrative fact. But for many, the film is the canon, and so a made-up moment becomes reality in popular memory. This rewriting of the Slytherin role diminishes the depth of the battle itself. The final stand at Hogwarts was not a simple battle of good versus evil. It was a moment of choice. Every student had to decide where they stood, and that included the Slytherins. By removing their choice, the film removes the entire point. It turns this scene from a moral crucible into a cartoonish division of heroes and cowards. It also dishonors those students who did leave. Choosing not to fight is not by itself an act of treachery. It may be fear, it may be survival, it may be obedience, but the book never punishes them for it. It merely shows that war demands difficult decisions, and not everyone is prepared to make the same sacrifice. By contrast, the film's decision to imprison them implies guilt, as if their very identity warrants suspicion. The difference lies in tone, in intent. Rowling wanted readers to question, to look at bravery not as something housebound, but as something chosen. By contrast, the film's moment in the dungeons is not designed to provoke thought, it is designed to reassure. To make it easy for viewers to divide the world into heroes and villains. But that ease is a lie. The truth, the real story, is harder. It demands that we see courage where we least expect it and cowardice where we assumed there was none. When fans echo the phrase, "Slytherins were all cowards," they are not quoting the book. They are quoting the film's invention. And in doing so, they betray the very message that runs through the veins of Rowling's world, that we are more than our house, our blood, our past, that who we choose to be matters more than where we began. This false memory, born of celluloid, has become a shared belief. But perhaps it's time to return to the source, to open the pages and find within them a different Slytherin story. One that tells of fear, yes, but also of courage, of students who stayed behind, of a house that in part stood and fought. Not loudly, not for glory, but because it was right, because in war even ambition may bend toward honor. Number 22, Draco Malfoy's redemption. Of all the moments that the Harry Potter films reshaped for cinematic effect, few have created as much quiet confusion as the portrayal of Draco Malfoy during the final battle at Hogwarts. In the movies, Draco's character is tinged with hints of redemption, a nearly silent gesture of transformation that suggests he may be turning toward the light. One of the most striking scenes occurs when Harry, freshly resurrected and marching back into the fray, deliberately hands Draco a wand. The moment is brief, wordless, but loaded with implications. Draco stares at Harry, seemingly overwhelmed by this act of trust, and some viewers see a flicker of gratitude cross his pale face. In the chaos of war, this second of almost spoken understanding plays like a peace offering. For many fans of the films, this was evidence that Draco had changed, but those who return to the books find no such redemption arc. Draco's behavior in Harry Potter and the Deathly Hallows is far less cinematic, far more human. He is not given a wand by Harry. He does not linger with conflicted glances. He is a boy drowning in the consequences of choices he was never strong enough to question. His presence in the room of requirement during the hunt for the diadem is not a statement of loyalty, but of confusion, weakness, and fear. And when Harry, Ron, and Hermione are attacked by Draco, Crabbe, and Goyle in that collapsing chamber of cursed fire and ancient relics, the truth of Draco's character is laid bare. He is not evil, but neither is he brave. During the escape from the fiery room, it is Harry who reaches out and saves Draco. As the cursed fire created by Crabbe rages around them, threatening to devour everything in its path, Draco clings to Goyle, unable to fly, unable to think. And it is Harry who had every reason to leave Draco to his fate, who risks everything to pull him to safety. There is no thanks, no handshake, no change of heart. The act is unilateral. It is heroism without reward. J.K. Rowling does not allow for soft focus redemption. She writes with the honesty of someone who knows that change does not happen in a moment, and certainly not in the middle of a war. The film, however, cannot resist offering a cleaner resolution. It places Draco on the battlements, surrounded by Death Eaters, and shows his mother whispering to him, urging him away. There is a long hesitation. He looks back. He watches Harry. He lingers. In some edits, it seems he might even nod. The implication is clear. Draco is having second thoughts. Draco wants to stay. Draco wants to be good, but the book offers no such poetic ambiguity. Draco leaves the castle with his parents. He does not linger. He does not glance back. He does not speak to Harry. And this silence is louder than any film adaptation could allow. In the novel, when Voldemort calls for Draco to join the Death Eaters during the ceasefire, there is no weighty pause, no emotional struggle. "Draco, Draco, come!" Voldemort calls, and Narcissa pulls her son forward. It is not an act of loyalty to the Dark Lord, but a movement of survival. Draco is not making a choice about good or evil. He is being pulled along by his mother's hand, just as he has been pulled along by fear, by obligation, by the cowardice that has haunted him since he took the dark mark. There is no moment of defiance, no resistance, only obedience. The quote from the book reads simply, "Draco had no choice. He was forced to obey. His mother tugged at him, urging him forward. There is no rebellion here, no flicker of moral clarity. And that is what makes Draco's story so deeply tragic. He is not redeemed because he is not brave enough to be. He is a child of his upbringing, of fear, of pressure. And that realism, that refusal to give him a heroic arc, is one of Rowling's most honest choices." The scene in the Room of Requirement is perhaps the most vivid illustration of the difference between book and film. When Crabbe conjures the fiend fire, he does not know how to control it. The room becomes a furnace of roaring beasts. It is Hermione who saves Ron, Harry who saves Draco, and Ron who saves Goyle. Harry wheeled about, the book says, and saw Draco and Goyle on the floor, surrounded by flames, and with a yell of horror, he saw the writhing, deadly flames cast shadows over their bodies. He sped toward them, hands outstretched, and seized Draco by the collar, dragging him backward. It is not subtle, it is not emotional, it is action, survival, mercy. And yet, even in the aftermath, Draco says nothing. He does not apologize, he does not thank Harry, he does not change. The books do not care for neat arcs or perfect resolutions. Draco lives, and that is all. He slinks away. He is a survivor, not a hero. This difference becomes even more striking when one considers how the film stylizes his exit. In the book, after Voldemort's defeat, Draco is seen only in passing. Malfoy had slunk away. Nobody had seen him leave. There is no confrontation, no conversation. The story moves forward without him. In the film, however, he is shown hesitating, then walking slowly, uncertainly, toward his family. It's filmed with poignancy, as if Draco is caught between two worlds, but that is not canon. That is movie magic, it's wishful thinking. Dressed up as narrative depth. Some viewers argue that the film's interpretation makes for a more satisfying story. And perhaps that's true for cinema, which thrives on redemption and resolution. But the book's refusal to grant Draco a full circle arc is not a weakness, it is a strength. It is a reminder that not all villains are redeemed, that not all victims find courage, that some people survive by doing nothing, by hoping others act in their stead. Rowling is careful with Draco's development. In Half-Blood Prince, she gives us access to his fear, his pale face, his shaking hands, his struggle in the bathroom, the way he lowers his wand when Dumbledore disarms him. She lets us feel his terror, she even lets us pity him, but she does not make him brave, and she never lets us believe he is ready to choose right over wrong. That's the point. Draco is not meant to be a hero. He is meant to be real. In Deathly Hallows, during the scene at Malfoy Manor, Harry disguises his identity, and when Bellatrix demands Draco confirm who he is, Draco hesitates. He does not confirm it is Harry. He is afraid. He is uncertain. But again, he does not act. He does not lie to protect Harry. He simply refuses to speak. Silence, not defiance. That's all he can muster. The quote from that chapter is telling. Draco was looking at Harry as though he had never seen him before. Perhaps he had not. This line is layered with implication, but not resolution. Draco's shock is not a sign of change, but of confusion. His world is unraveling. He is lost. But he does not step forward. He does not help. He remains still. Even in the epilogue, 19 years later, Draco remains distant. At King's Cross Station, he nods at Harry, but they do not speak. They are not friends. They are not enemies. They are adults who survived a war and lived to watch their children board the train. The nod is not forgiveness. It is not friendship. It is history. It is distance. It is the mark of time past, not hearts changed. The films, understandably, long for closure. So they give Draco a moment of almost forgiveness, a softened gaze, a hesitant step. It's beautiful in its own way, but it is not the truth of the books. It is an invention, a cinematic flourish placed over the raw honesty of Rowling's narrative. What the movie suggests, this notion that Draco might have changed because Harry gave him a wand, is compelling but false. The wand never existed in the books. That exchange never took place. It is a metaphor crafted by screenwriters, not a canon moment. And it plants in the minds of viewers a different Draco, one more like Snape, tortured but ultimately noble. But Draco is not Snape. He is not brave. He is not self-sacrificing. He is a boy who could not cope, could not fight, could not flee. When the viewers remember the final scenes and speak of Draco switching sides, they speak of the film. The books say otherwise. The books give us a Draco who is too scared to speak, too scared to fight, too scared to thank the boy who saved his life. And perhaps that makes him more real than any sweeping gesture ever could. The character arc fans saw in the movie never belonged to Draco. It was a ghost of what could have been, a rewritten memory, a mirage of redemption superimposed upon the ashes of war. It looked like forgiveness. It smelled like grace, but it was illusion. Draco never turned. He only survived. And in Rowling's world, sometimes that's all a person can do. Number 23, Hermione erases her parents' memories. Of all the haunting images the Harry Potter films etched into our collective memory, one in particular has embedded itself with unusual permanence. Hermione Granger, standing in the middle of her family's living room, wand trembling, eyes wet with unshed tears, casting a spell to erase herself from her parents' lives. The camera lingers as framed photographs shift and vanish, as if her existence were a pencil mark being rubbed away from the paper of time. The moment is silent, solemn, almost sacred. It feels like canon, like something J.K. Rowling herself must have lingered over with quill in hand, but it isn't. It was never in the book, not like that. In Harry Potter and the Deathly Hallows, Rowling does indeed mention that Hermione modified her parents' memories, but the scene is described in no more than a passing sentence. I've also modified my parents' memories so that they're convinced they're really called Wendell and Monica Wilkins, and that their life's ambition is to move to Australia, which they have now done. Hermione tells Harry and Ron, there is no living room, no fading photographs, no silent goodbye. The emotional weight of the act is left to the reader's imagination, and yet for many fans, the film's version has become the dominant memory, as if it had always been part of the text. The power of cinema lies in its ability to transform subtext into spectacle. The film's decision to dramatize Hermione's sacrifice was not merely an artistic embellishment, it was a deliberate emotional crescendo, a visual metaphor for the kind of loss war demands. The simplicity of the book's sentence, Hermione modifying her parents' memories, is transformed into a mournful ritual in the film. She doesn't just protect them from the war, she deletes herself. The image is unforgettable. The film scene opens in an ordinary suburban home, sunlit and peaceful. It's the kind of place untouched by the darkness rising in the wizarding world. Hermione's footsteps are quiet as she moves through the room. Her wand raises almost reluctantly. She speaks the incantation, Obliviate, and the house begins to forget her. Family photos on the mantelpiece no longer contain her image. The silence deepens. And then she walks away, alone, a ghost in the home she has protected with her absence. It's the cinematic equivalent of a scream muffled by duty. But this moment, so deeply moving, so iconic, does not exist in Rowling's text. It is an invention, a beautiful one, but still fiction within fiction. The book gives Hermione's decision emotional weight only through her words and her resolve. She tells Harry and Ron what she has done without dwelling on the pain. She states the facts, new names, new memories, new country. The horror is implicit. There is no time for sentimentality. War is coming, and she has already begun to act like a soldier. The distinction matters because fans often forget which medium gave them which emotion. The Hermione of the book is brave, strategic, emotionally resilient. She compartmentalizes, she prepares, she doesn't describe the smell of her parents' house one last time or mention the sound of their laughter. She erases herself efficiently. And that version of Hermione, though less cinematic, is deeply powerful in its own right. It's the kind of quiet sacrifice that speaks volumes when said in only one sentence. The film version, however, makes that sacrifice visible. It slows down time so that we can feel every crack in Hermione's heart. The camera forces us to bear witness, and in doing so it gives viewers a version of Hermione that feels almost more real than the one on the page. It elevates her to the status of tragic heroine, an Odysseus choosing exile, a Penelope unraveling the threads of memory so no one can find her. This discrepancy between book and film raises an interesting phenomenon: how easily cinematic interpretations can replace literary originals in the public consciousness. Many fans, when asked, will recall Hermione's memory spell scene with vivid clarity. They will describe the living room, the photographs, the way her name disappears from the frame. They might even remember the lighting, the shadows, but ask them to find it in the book, and they cannot, because it isn't there. It never was. Such is the strength of visual storytelling. It lodges itself in our memory like a dream mistaken for fact. And when that image aligns so seamlessly with our understanding of a character, as it does with Hermione, who would do anything to protect those she loves, it becomes canonical in our minds, even if it isn't in the text. The line between adaptation and source begins to blur. In many ways, the film's decision to include this scene is a tribute to the emotional depth Rowling built into Hermione's character. The filmmakers knew this moment was necessary, even if Rowling didn't spell it out. They filled in the emotional blank space between two words, "I've also." Two words that opened the door to an ocean of unspoken grief. The movie simply stepped through that door. What makes this particular invented moment resonate so deeply is not just its beauty, but its believability. It feels exactly like something Hermione would do. It is logical, it is painful, it is brave, it is quiet, it is her. The magic is subtle, the consequence is enormous. By removing herself from her parents' memories, Hermione ensures their safety, but at a cost no less than the loss of her own identity within their family. Even the detail about them moving to Australia, which feels like a minor plot point in the book, takes on mythic proportions in the film. The idea of Hermione's parents, now unaware they ever had a daughter starting a new life on the other side of the world, is devastating. It amplifies the stakes. It reminds us that the war has already reached every home, even the ones that look like nothing could ever touch them. This phenomenon of invented scenes becoming perceived canon reveals a larger truth about fandom. We are not passive recipients of stories. We internalize them. We build mental images. And when those images are reinforced by films, they solidify. They become part of the personal mythology we carry about the characters we love. Hermione's spell is no longer a line in a book. It's a memory we share with her, a goodbye we witnessed. There are other examples in the series where the films took liberties with the source material, but few are as successful or as affecting as this one. Some alterations spark outrage among purists. This one did not. Instead, it became one of the most cherished moments in the series. It gave Hermione a tragic, noble origin for her role in the war. It reframed her journey from clever student to selfless warrior. It is easy to see why people forget the truth. The scene is structured with all the elements of classic tragedy. The protagonist makes a sacrifice. The world changes. The cost is unseen but felt. It resonates not just because it's sad, but because it's meaningful. The filmmakers turned a narrative footnote into a character-defining moment, and it worked so well it overrode the original. One could argue that the films, in doing so, improved the emotional texture of the story. The books are rich in lore, dialogue, and plot, but often lean on the reader to imagine the internal lives of characters. The films, bound by time but freed by visual grammar, have the ability to dramatize what the books only imply. In this case, that dramatic license gave us one of the series' most unforgettable scenes. Yet it also serves as a cautionary tale. When we misremember where a moment came from, we begin to rewrite the story in our own minds. We attribute meaning to the wrong source. We believe that Rowling wrote what was actually imagined by a screenwriter or director. And in doing so, we dilute the power of the written word, which chose to convey the same message in far fewer strokes. Hermione's decision, as written by Rowling, was already extraordinary. She changed her parents' memories. She gave them new names, new lives, new ambitions. She did it without fanfare. That restraint speaks volumes. It tells us who she is, someone who acts, not someone who performs. The film gave her the performance. The book gave her the soul. And so when we watch that beautiful, painful scene in Deathly Hallows, Part 1, we are witnessing an echo of canon, not the canon itself. It is a dramatized echo, a cinematic flourish, a poetic license taken in honor of a character who deserved it. But it is not the written truth. It is a truth of feeling, not of ink. For fans, the question then becomes, does it matter? Perhaps not. Stories live on in the hearts of those who carry them. If Hermione's whispered "obliviate" resonates more than a sentence in Chapter 6, then that is its own kind of magic. But let us not forget where the story truly lives and what the book chose not to show us so we could imagine it ourselves. Number 24, Harry and Ginny's first kiss. In the flickering candlelight of the Gryffindor common room, the scene unfolded in the movie with a kind of hushed solemnity that felt more like a whispered secret than a crescendo of young love. Ginny Weasley entered the room with practiced subtlety, her footsteps nearly silent as she approached Harry. There was no noise, no chatter, no laughter from other students, just the two of them in a bubble of unnatural calm. She paused in front of him, her expression unreadable. Then, without a word, she leaned forward and kissed him. The moment hung awkwardly in the air. Harry, stunned, stood frozen, his arms awkwardly by his sides. It was meant to be tender, perhaps even symbolic. But it felt like a scene carved hastily from marble, cold, stiff, and strangely lifeless. This, for many viewers, was the only version of Harry and Ginny's first kiss they ever knew. And for those who never read the books, it was accepted as canon. But in truth, this portrayal is far removed from the energy and warmth of the original moment J.K. Rowling penned. The film compresses an entire emotional arc into a single, muted gesture, stripping away the layers of connection that were carefully built over months of storytelling in the novel. The cinematic kiss lacks context. It gives the illusion that Harry and Ginny's romance bloomed in silence, with no witness, no build-up, and no joy. In contrast, the book, Harry Potter and the Half-Blood Prince, offers a kiss that erupts like a firecracker in a sky full of stars. It takes place not in some private, quiet alcove, but in the heart of Gryffindor Tower, filled with laughter, music, and celebration. The Gryffindor Quidditch team had just clinched the cup. Ron and Hermione are there, the room is alive with energy, and Harry, caught in the high of victory and admiration, sees Ginny running toward him. In that moment, everything, his doubts, his fears, even the dark storm of Voldemort, melts away. He acts without overthinking, and their kiss becomes a moment shared with the entire house, met with cheers and beaming faces. J.K. Rowling wrote, without thinking, without planning it, without worrying about the fact that 50 people were watching, Harry kissed her. That sentence alone captures more passion, spontaneity, and emotional resonance than the entire film sequence. This was not a quiet whisper of affection. It was a public declaration, an emotional culmination that had been simmering since Ginny stopped blushing in Harry's presence and began standing tall in her own identity. The scene wasn't just about a kiss, it was about timing, chemistry, and the crowd's acknowledgement that something right had just happened. The misrepresentation in the film becomes even more glaring when one recalls the intricate web of subtle interactions that J.K. Rowling wove between Harry and Ginny in the books. Ginny is not just a girl who appears at the right time to be kissed. She is a strong, witty, sharp-tongued, and fiercely independent character who gradually evolves from the shy younger sister of Ron to someone Harry genuinely admires. Her progression is patient and organic. Harry begins to notice her not because she suddenly starts lingering in quiet corners, but because she laughs at his jokes, challenges him, and fights beside him. The book version of Ginny is dynamic, filled with fire and light. The movie sadly flattens her into a shadow. What's even more perplexing is how the film missed an opportunity to deliver an emotional payoff that fans of the books longed to see. By the time the kiss happens in the book, readers have followed Ginny's arc for 6 years. They've seen her develop from the girl who couldn't speak around Harry to the young woman who dated other boys, honed her magical skills, and fearlessly joined Dumbledore's army. Harry's growing feelings for her are not sudden. They're slow realizations, sparked by her humor, her bravery, and her radiant presence during moments of darkness. He had never noticed before how attractive Ginny was, Rowling writes earlier in the book, but now he was noticing it all the time. It's a line in that signals Harry's shift from obliviousness to awareness, and it's deeply human. That slow burn is essential to understanding why the kiss in the book is so powerful. It's not just about physical attraction, it's about timing. It's about Harry's realization that Ginny is someone he genuinely wants to be with, someone who understands him without needing explanations. The movie version removes that essential growth, turning their relationship into a footnote rather than a subplot. Viewers are left to wonder why Ginny, who had been largely absent in emotional scenes until then, suddenly becomes the recipient of Harry's affections. There is also an irony in how the films handle other romances with more care. The slow dance of tension between Ron and Hermione, for instance, gets space to breathe. Their awkward exchanges, lingering glances, and jealous outbursts are explored with relative depth, allowing the audience to root for their union. But Harry and Ginny are granted no such luxury. Their love story is reduced to quiet looks and 2 or 3 scenes that do little to convince viewers of emotional depth. And so the kiss, instead of feeling like a reward, feels like a riddle. Even the physical staging of the movie kiss contributes to its awkwardness. The lighting is dim, the room almost empty, and the music soft and hesitant. It's hard to believe this is the same Harry Potter who once smashed a glass out of jealousy when Ginny was with Dean Thomas, or the same Ginny who fought like a lioness in the Department of Mysteries. Their chemistry in the book is bold and unapologetic. In the film, it is timid, as if the filmmakers were unsure of how to portray passion without embarrassment. The difference becomes more pronounced when one considers the emotional landscape of the book's Quidditch match. Harry is not just a captain leading his team, he is a leader who finally sees things come together. Winning the match is symbolic. It's the first time Harry is allowed to fully enjoy something without the shadow of prophecy. He enters the common room not just as a boy who won a game, but as someone finally free, even if briefly, from destiny. Ginny, full of laughter and joy, represents that fleeting moment of normalcy. Their kiss becomes the embodiment of that joy. It's a rare, golden instant that belongs only to youth. And then there is the response of the people around them. In the book, the kiss is met with cheers and applause. Ron stares but does not object. Hermione smiles. Dean Thomas, though slightly uncomfortable, says nothing. Everyone senses that this was meant to happen. Harry doesn't retreat from Ginny. He sits beside her and holds her hand. Their relationship moves forward naturally, with warmth and inclusion. This is not a secret tryst, but an acknowledged connection. In the film, however, the kiss is followed by nothing. There is no celebration, no acknowledgement, not even a smile from Harry. Ginny simply walks away and Harry is left standing, silent and unsure. The emotional vacuum created by the film version isn't just a missed moment, it's a missed message. Love, especially young love, is supposed to carry with it some turbulence, some risk, and a touch of public defiance. Rowling understood that. She gave Harry a kiss that challenged norms, invited stares, and declared, "This is who I want." The movie opts for discretion, subtlety, and ultimately forgettability. It silences the roar of the Gryffindor crowd and replaces it with a whisper that vanishes before it can leave a mark. Perhaps what makes the book's version resonate more deeply is its clarity of purpose. Harry kissing Ginny is not just about romance, it's about choosing something bright in the darkness. It's about claiming joy even when war looms. Rowling crafted that kiss as a lighthouse in the fog. The movie turns it into a shadow at dusk. One stands tall and proud, the other hides from its own light. One cannot help but mourn the loss of that energy, the loss of the crowd's reaction, of the communal sense of something special happening. A Gryffindor celebration has always been a wild, joyful thing. The red and gold, the laughter, the clinking of butterbeer mugs, it all adds texture. The film stripped that away. What remained was a kiss no one saw, and worse, few remembered. Harry's journey is filled with sacrifice, but Rowling gave him this one single reward before everything darkened in the final book. That kiss in the book felt earned. In the film, it felt like a checkbox ticked off a to-do list. One cannot help but imagine how much more powerful it would have been to see Harry, surrounded by his peers, lean into joy and choose Ginny not in secrecy but in celebration. The book gave him that moment. The film took it away. There's a lesson here, perhaps unintentionally, that the truest moments of connection often deserve to be loud, messy, and witnessed, that love should not always be polite and whispered in shadows, and that characters, like people, deserve arcs, not shortcuts. The kiss between Harry and Ginny is one of those moments where the story's heart is visible, pulsing, alive. To reduce it to a quiet scene in a half-lit room is to miss that heartbeat entirely. J.K. Rowling's version of the kiss reminds us that magic doesn't only live in wands and spells. Sometimes it lives in the decision to step into the light, grab someone's hand, and kiss them like the world is watching, and cheer when it does. Number 25. Voldemort's cinematic death. Voldemort's end in the Harry Potter and the Deathly Hallows film is a swirling spectacle of vanishing ashes, a grand cinematic dissolution. As the final blow lands, his body evaporates into the wind, as though he were not made of flesh and bone, but smoke and sin, fading into the void with eerie elegance. The audience, spellbound, watches in silence, as evil is quite literally blown away. It is poetic, unforgettable, and fundamentally wrong. That ending, though visually captivating, is not what J.K. Rowling wrote. It is not what Harry Potter experienced in the pages of the book, and it is not what readers were meant to feel, because Voldemort does not die as a phantom, he dies as a man. The truth of Voldemort's death lies in the last chapter of a war, not in visual grandeur, but in thematic weight. Rowling was never writing a story about magic being stronger than death. She was writing a story about choice, humanity, and consequence. When Harry faces Voldemort in the final duel, it's not just a battle of wands, it's the culmination of a philosophical journey. Voldemort, who spent his life chasing immortality, who believed he had become more than mortal, is finally undone, not by overwhelming power, but by his own hubris. The moment of his death, as described in the book, strips away every illusion he ever held about himself. There is no scattering of dust, no fading into non-existence. What Rowling gave us is a thud, a fall, a moment almost anticlimactic in its physical simplicity but monumental in its message. Tom Riddle hit the floor with a mundane finality, Rowling writes. His body lay face down, pale and ordinary, as if the soul had simply departed a shell. No dramatics, no disappearing act, just a body. The body of a man who had feared death so deeply he had torn apart his own soul to avoid it, and still he could not escape. The significance of this is profound. Voldemort's death is not just an ending, it's a message. He was not a god, not a demon, not something above life or beneath it. He was human, a powerful, terrifying, ruthless human, but a human nonetheless. Rowling intentionally drives this point home. By denying Voldemort a grand exit, she denies him the myth he tried to create about himself. He does not vanish like a cursed spirit. He dies like any other man who has reached the end of his story. In the film, however, this message is washed away beneath the shimmer of special effects. The visual of Voldemort's body unraveling into ash may have been cinematic, but it was also misleading. It gave the impression that Voldemort was something supernatural, an entity unbound by the rules of nature. The audience was left with the image of a curse fading into mist, but this visual betrayed the essence of the character and the moral of his journey. Voldemort's death was not supposed to feel magical, it was supposed to feel real. There's a particular moment in the book where Harry, having survived the killing curse in the Forbidden Forest, walks back into Hogwarts with a living, breathing body. Voldemort does not understand it. He cannot fathom how Harry is alive. He cannot comprehend the protective magic of sacrifice, the very thing that defeated him when Harry was a baby. This is not a man who transcends death. This is a man who never understood life. When he falls, it is not just death claiming him, it is his ignorance collapsing in on itself. Rowling makes it explicit that Voldemort's death is not triumphant. Harry does not cheer, he does not exult. There is no music swelling in the background, the battle is over, and the survivors gather in quiet grief and relief. The line from the book reads, "He was dead, killed by his own rebounding curse, and Harry stood with two wands in his hand, staring down at the shell of his enemy." The emphasis is on the ordinariness of Voldemort's end, the shell, the remains of someone who tried so hard to be more. The contrast with Bellatrix Lestrange is important here. Her death is theatrical. Molly Weasley defeats her in a flash of maternal rage, and Bellatrix explodes the same way as the others she had killed. Rowling gives that moment its visual power, but Voldemort, he gets no such spectacle, because giving him a showy death would only affirm his delusions of grandeur. His ending had to be humble, it had to be finite, and it had to be human. The irony, of course, is that Voldemort feared death more than anything. He went to unthinkable lengths to prevent it, splitting his soul into 7 pieces, murdering, experimenting with the darkest of magics, all to delay what he believed was the ultimate defeat. And in the end, death comes for him quietly. No fireworks, no grand departure, just the earth receiving him like it does every other man. For all his efforts, he could not change that. There is also something deeply satisfying in the way the book allows Voldemort to die by his own hand. The Elder Wand refuses to kill its true master, and the killing curse rebounds. It is not Harry who kills Voldemort. It is Voldemort who kills himself, not by intention but by ignorance. His refusal to understand loyalty, love, or humility becomes the trap he cannot escape. The final spell is not just a magical rebound, it is poetic justice. And yet the film bypasses this. It shortens the emotional payoff and emphasizes the physical disintegration of the character. When Voldemort dies in the movie, there is a moment of eerie quiet as he flakes away into the wind. There is no one to look at the body. Because there is no body, this robs the story of a critical truth, that evil can be terrifying, but it is not immortal, that even the darkest figure can fall and leave behind nothing more than a corpse. Harry's act in the book is also important. He insists that Voldemort be treated like anyone else. He tells the others that the body should be moved away from the Great Hall, but not discarded, not paraded. He was just Tom Riddle, Harry says, just Tom. This is not pity, this is understanding. Harry refuses to let Voldemort become a legend in death. He strips him of the myth, lays bare the truth that all monsters are mortal. This moment ties directly back to Dumbledore's teachings. Dumbledore, who told Harry that, to the well-organized mind, death is but the next great adventure. Voldemort never organized his mind, he never accepted death, and so he never found peace. When he dies, there is no suggestion of his soul moving on, no mention of freedom. His end is empty, cold, and it's meant to be. Rowling does not glamorize his final moment because there is no glory in a life wasted on fear. The philosophical weight of this cannot be overstated. Children read this story. They see Voldemort as the embodiment of fear. And they see him fall, not in a blaze of glory, but in silence. Rowling wanted young readers to understand that even the worst evil is still human, still defeatable, still accountable. The film, in choosing fantasy over philosophy, muddied that message. The visual was compelling, yes, but the lesson was lost. The presence of Voldemort's body also anchors the story in consequence. There are bodies everywhere in the aftermath. Fred Weasley, Remus Lupin, Nymphadora Tonks, Colin Creevey. Their deaths matter because they were real. And Voldemort's death matters in the same way. To show him vanish like mist is to deny that reality. To reduce his death to special effects is to remove him from the world of the living and the dying, and that is the very illusion Rowling sought to destroy. There's a moment earlier in the book, in the graveyard of Little Hangleton, when Voldemort regains a body. That moment is terrifying precisely because it reminds readers that he is real, tangible, dangerous. He bleeds, he breathes. And so when that body falls, when that breathing stops, we are reminded again, evil is not an abstract idea. It is a human choice, a human action, a human consequence, and humans die. When the film turns Voldemort into dust, it inadvertently echoes the death of the Dark Lord Sauron in The Lord of the Rings, who also crumbles into the wind. But Sauron was a mythic force. Voldemort was a schoolboy named Tom Riddle, who made himself a monster. Rowling did not create a myth. She created a warning, and warnings need to be grounded in reality, not fantasy. In stripping Voldemort of his body, the film also strips Harry of his triumph. Not the triumph of power, but the triumph of understanding. Harry had every reason to hate Tom Riddle, but he does not kill him in hatred. He defeats him in clarity, in courage, in refusal to become like him. That choice, not to seek revenge, not to use the Elder Wand to dominate, is the true victory. It is the moment Harry becomes the opposite of Voldemort, and it only resonates because Voldemort remains human. Perhaps the saddest part of Voldemort's story is that he could have been different. He was once a child at Hogwarts, a gifted, curious, lonely boy. Dumbledore saw it, so did Slughorn, but he made the wrong choices over and over again, and Rowling does not absolve him of them. She lets him fall, hard, loud, human, not as a phantom, not as a curse, not as a shadow, but as a body that hits the floor with finality. That is why it matters, not for spectacle, but for story, not for magic, but for meaning. Voldemort's death in the book is a mirror, a stark reflection of his own fear, his own denial, his own failure. The thud of his body against the stone is the final sentence of a life built on the wrong ideas, and it tells us more than anything that no one, no matter how feared, no matter how powerful, is beyond the reach of death.